Hello everyone. In previous class we have discussed what is the friction and how the friction affect by the motion. So let's be quick revise. What is the friction? So friction is that which opposes the motion, or we can say the friction is that which resists the motion or resists the relative speed. So what is the relative speed? So we have discussed that when the two objects are going in a same direction or going in the opposite direction, then known as the relative motion. And we have already discussed that when we kick a ball on the ground, then after certain time period it covers at some distance and then it will stops. Why the ball gets stopped? Because a force of friction is acted by the earth on the surface of the ball, so that's why the ball gets stopped. So what are the factors which depends on the there are various type of the factor on which the friction is depend. So first one is the roughness of the surface, second one is the mass of the moving object. So first we discussed here the first roughness of the surface. So what is the roughness of the surface? What do you understand by the roughness of the surface? That means if the surface is rough, then the friction becomes more, and if the surface is slippery, that means we can say the smooth, then the friction is becomes less. Now suppose when we going in a road, then we can walk easily, and if we walk on a ice surface, then what happened? We slip. Why we slip? Because there remains the friction becomes very low on the surface of the water. That's why we cannot walk easily. Now the next one is the mass of the object. So what is the mass of the object? That means if the object is heavy, then the friction becomes more, and if the object is less heavy, then the friction becomes less. Now the next one is the friction does not depends on the amount of the surface area in the contact between the moving bodies on the relative speed of the body. That means friction does not depends on the surface area. If we increase the surface area or we decrease the surface area, so there are not effect on the friction. Now the next one is the it depends on the magnitude of the force holding the bodies together. That means if the magnitude of the friction is more, then the friction becomes more. And now the next one is the when a body is moving over a horizontal surface, it presses down against the surface with a force equal to its weight. That means, now suppose this is a object, and we write here when a body is moving over a horizontal surface. This one is a horizontal surface on which the object is moving on, and it presses down against the surface. That means it presses down against the surface. This one is the surface, and it presses down against the surface with force equal its force. That means this force against the weight of the object. So this one is the, we can say the this one is the F is equals to mg, mass of the object, and this force is acting on the opposite direction of this object. So now the next one is this is a table on which a book is placed. Now if we apply a force on this book, then what happened? It moves in this direction. And now after that we take a membrane and placed it under the book. Then what happened? Then we see that the force which is applied before, and when we applied after placing the membrane, then we apply the force less in comparison to the when we not place the membrane behind the, or we can say the behind the book. So why it is becomes? So it becomes because if we placed a membrane, thin membrane, then the friction becomes more, and when we not place the membrane, then the friction. Sorry, when we place the membrane, then the friction becomes less, and when we does not place the membrane, then the friction becomes more. So we apply the more force in comparison to the when we place the membrane on the table. So these are the some factors on the friction effect. So thanks for watching my video.